The silence aboard the Eternal Dominion was the kind that preceded extinction. Supreme Commander Zalor stood at the bridge of his flagship, 700 meters of reinforced Vithian alloy and plasma cannon arrays, and watched the blue marble hanging in the dark below him. Earth. Insignificant. Wet. Crawling with a species that had only recently figured out how to leave its own atmosphere without blowing themselves up in the process. He had conquered 43 worlds. This would be 44. "The signal is ready, Commander," his communications officer chirped, mandibles clicking in the cadence of ceremony. "The human delegation is requesting to board." Zalor folded two of his forearms behind his back. "Let them come. Grant them the dignity of looking upon what will end them." Ambassador Darian Voss stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the hangar deck of the Eternal Dominion with the same energy a man might bring to a Tuesday morning staff meeting, mildly inconvenienced, coffee-deprived, and faintly annoyed at the scheduling. He was 44 years old. Medium height. Salt and pepper hair that had given up fighting the gray somewhere around his third warzone posting. He wore no armor, carried no weapon that the Vithian scanners could detect, and had apparently packed a thermos. He was unscrewing the cap and taking a sip when the escort of 12 Vithian soldiers surrounded him. "Ambassador Voss." The translator rendered Zalor's voice into something between a rumble and a hiss. "You have traveled a great distance to hear terms." "I traveled a great distance," Darian said pleasantly, screwing the cap back on, "because your fleet showed up 17 light minutes from my planet and I thought it would be rude not to pop over." He looked around the hangar with the casual interest of a man touring a moderately impressive factory. "Nice ship. How many crew?" Zalor descended from the elevated platform slowly, deliberately, the way a predator descends when it wants the prey to understand what it is. He stood nearly 3 meters tall. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world, every part of him was dense, armored by nature, and built for violence. He had personally crushed the skulls of 2 enemy commanders in single combat. There were monuments to his victories. 400,000, he said. Darian nodded. "And how many ships in the fleet?" 812. "All armed?" "To their full capacity." Darian looked at him then. Really looked at him, the way a man looks at a problem he's already worked out but wants to confirm. "Okay," he said. "Here's why I'm here. You sent a message, very dramatic, by the way, loved the production value, giving Earth 72 hours to surrender or face total annihilation. My government asked me to come and hear your terms formally." He paused. "And to deliver a message in return." Zalor spread all 4 arms wide, a gesture of magnanimous dominance his species had used for 10,000 years to signal the granting of audience to the defeated. "Speak, then. Tell me of your surrender conditions." Darian Voss grinned. It was not the grin of a frightened man. It was not the grin of a diplomat performing bravery for the cameras. It was something older and stranger, the grin of a species that had spent 10,000 years at war with itself and was only now, finally, getting the chance to point all of that at something external. "You gave us 3 days, he said. "I'm here to tell you that you won't last 3 seconds." The hangar went very still. One of the Vithian soldiers moved, a reflex, mandibles snapping, and Darian didn't flinch. Not a millimeter. "Here is what you don't understand about humanity," he continued, voice still conversational, still the tone of a man explaining directions to a tourist. "You've been watching us for, 60 years. You saw us split the atom and you thought, dangerous, primitive, chaotic. You saw us fight wars over invisible lines on dirt and you thought, disorganized, tribal, easy to fracture. You saw us poison our own atmosphere and you thought, suicidal, irrational, no survival instinct." He took another sip of coffee. Every single one of those assessments was correct. And every single one of them is exactly why you've already lost. Zalor's eyes, all 6 of them, narrowed. "You are attempting a psychological stratagem." "I'm attempting a conversation." Darien set the thermos down on a crate of Vithian weapons and pulled a small tablet from his jacket pocket. What's on this device is a full inventory of Earth's current defensive posture. Not classified, I'm giving it to you. Go ahead. He held it out. Zalor took it. His intelligence officer scrambled forward and translated the data. Zalor read it. Then read it again. This is. The translator struggled. This is not possible. Which part? The yield figures. The delivery systems. The Zalor paused. You have automated platforms in low orbit that we did not detect. Metamaterial shielding. We've had it since 2031. Darien retrieved his thermos. Here's what's going to happen in the next 3 seconds after you fire your first shot. Every orbital platform activates. They're not targeting your ships, they're targeting the space between your ships. The gravity pulse generators collapse the tactical spacing in your fleet formation. You'll have 800 ships suddenly trying to occupy the same coordinates. That's not a battle. That's a recycling event. Zalor set the tablet down. His forearms had gone very still, the stillness of a creature recalculating. You're bluffing. I'm hoping you think that. Darien's grin didn't waver. Because if you call the bluff and fire, every piece of what I just described activates automatically. No human authorization required. No countdown. No dramatic music. Just physics. He walked slowly to the viewport and looked out at the fleet hanging in the dark, hundreds of ships, kilometer-long instruments of conquest, enough firepower to crack a moon. You want to know the real secret about humanity? We've been preparing for you for 100 years. Not you specifically. For anyone. Because we always knew, that the universe was not going to be friendly. We've spent a century building weapons we hoped we'd never use, pointed at a sky we hoped would stay quiet. He turned back to face Zalor. You ended the quiet. And every engineer, every physicist, every soldier who spent their career building things for a war that might never come? He spread his hands. Christmas morning, Commander. The silence stretched between them. You have conquered 43 worlds, Darien said. I know your record. I know how those campaigns went: orbital bombardment, ground suppression, resource extraction, next planet. You have never fought a species that spent the same 10,000 years your empire was building ships, also building weapons to shoot them down. Zalor's intelligence officer leaned close and whispered something. The commander's posture changed, barely perceptible, but Darien had spent 20 years reading rooms where the language was body, not words. Your deep scan probes, Darien said gently. They just confirmed the orbital platforms. Silence. Commander. Darien picked up his thermos and walked back toward the transport shuttle. Earth's formal response to your ultimatum is as follows: we decline. We wish you a safe journey home. And if you choose to test us instead, he paused at the ramp. The Vithian Empire will be remembered as the 44th civilization that found out what happens when you corner an animal that learned to love the fight. He boarded the shuttle. He didn't look back. The Eternal Dominion held its position for 6 hours. Then 8. Then 14. At hour 22 of the 72-hour ultimatum, the Vithian fleet began, silently and without announcement, to move. Not toward Earth. Away from it. The formation broke into jump-capable clusters, and one by one they winked out of the system, leaving nothing behind but the fading heat signatures of engines and the faint electromagnetic echo of a civilization quietly deciding that some planets were not worth the cost. On Earth, in a situation room buried 40 meters under a mountain in Switzerland, a general looked at the screens showing the departing fleet and let out a breath he had been holding for 3 days. Did we actually have all of that? He asked. The gravity pulse generators. The metamaterial shielding. All of it. Darien Voss, sitting in the corner with his thermos, smiled into his coffee. "General," he said, "I've been in this job for 20 years. The first rule of negotiation is never bluff with something you can't back up." He took a sip. "The second rule is never tell them which parts were the bluff." He stood, straightened his jacket, and walked out of the room, leaving behind a silence that, for the first time in 3 days, felt like something other than dread. It felt, unmistakably, like humanity.